Hello, and welcome to More Intelligent Tomorrow, a wide-ranging exploration of the potential impact of AI on the world around us, as envisioned by the future heroes of the human and machine intelligence revolution. Can humans and machines work together to end the pandemic? We'll discuss this and DataRobot's Contagion Net initiative with Sally Embrey on today's very special episode. And now, your host, Ben Taylor.
Sally, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
This is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the stuff that you're working on. Tell me about Contagion Net.
I can talk about Contagion Net for hours, but essentially over the past 6 months, DataRobot has been working on a mission to stop the spread of COVID-19 using a combination of what we call antigen checks, which are lateral flow assays that detect the presence of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and combining that with AI and a digital platform so people can understand their risk. And it's been an amazing project. It's been an amazing ride.
In listening to you, I feel like there's so much technology packed in just what you said. Let's break it down to the basics. So how would you describe an antigen to someone in tech?
An antigen is basically, it's anything that your body is reacting to. It's like a foreign particle that your body is reacting to. In our case, what we do is we are detecting proteins that are on the virus that causes COVID-19. So we are detecting the antigens that we're detecting is a spike protein and a nucleocapsid protein. But more broadly, antigens are just something that your body's responding to.
And so these foreign particles that you mentioned, these are different parts of the virus?
The coronavirus is a spiked virus. So if you look at it, it's like, you see the ball and it's got like little spikes coming out of it. That's why it's actually called a coronavirus, because of the crown. It looks like a crown. So we detect two different proteins. We detect some proteins on the spike itself. And so the spike is what's used to actually, the virus attaches to your cells and inserts it by attaching through spike proteins. And then we also detect another protein on the inside of the virus called a nucleocapsid protein. And the nucleocapsid protein is, like I said, like it's an interior part of the virus.
Measuring these two different things, does this make the test more robust?
Yeah. So there's a couple reasons why. First of all, our assay is semi-quantitative. And so all the other kind of antigen tests that you hear about are qualitative, which means 2 lines is that you're positive, 1 line is that you're negative. And so they're just basically detecting, sometimes people call them on-off lateral flow assays, because it's on you're positive, off you're negative. So what we wanted to do specifically, being a data-driven company, we really were interested in making it a more quantitative experience, being able to get more data out of our lateral flow assays. So we decided to go the semi-quantitative route. And so targeting the 2 proteins helps with that, because essentially what we do is we have 3 test lines on the antigen checks themselves, 1 for spike protein, 1 for nucleocapsid protein, and a second one for the same nucleocapsid protein, but at half the concentration. And that variability allows us to understand a low, medium, or high level of viral load, which we then translate into contagiousness.
So we're coming up on the 1-year mark. Why haven't we fixed this?
I wish I had a perfect answer for that, but a lot of it is just people kind of fighting themselves as opposed to actually fighting the virus. I think often we're letting perfect be the enemy of good. And maybe that sounds like a little cliche, but we've seen other countries deploy antigen tests in a way that helps stop the spread. So you can see actually there is a large trial going on in Liverpool, UK right now that has, I believe at last time I checked, they've detected something like 12,000 asymptomatic individuals, and they've rapidly iterated on the program in terms of expanding it out to different populations so they can get access to testing more quickly and get access to what we would call confirmatory testing or PCR testing more quickly. But that got a lot of negative press originally. There was a backlash in the scientific community and that the tests weren't good enough. And so as a result, were we doing more harm than good? But, if you are just waiting for the perfect solution, that means more people are getting sick. That means the spread is continuing. That means people die. This is the time to take action. It's not the time to sit on your hands.
And that number you just said, the 12,000 asymptomatic people detected, how many lives were saved with 12,000 asymptomatic people that stayed home a day early? Like, there's a number there. There is. Agreed.
There's a lot of evidence that people who are asymptomatic have the same viral load as people who are symptomatic. And that, again, we kind of approximate that viral load as your ability to spread, how contagious you are. And so finding those asymptomatic people is key. And no contact tracing effort can ever work if you're asymptomatic.
With Ebola, it hasn't become a global pandemic. People are symptomatic, we shut them down, we restrict travel, and we can contain Ebola, even though it's a terrible disease. COVID is so different because of this asymptomatic issue. Let's talk about the key differences there.
The symptoms also for Ebola are just severe. You're throwing up, you are, severely, severely, severely ill. It's very easy to identify who is sick with Ebola, whereas with COVID-19, sometimes a symptomatic case could be someone who lost their sense of smell. Whether you think that's a symptom or not, or whether you think that's a severe enough symptom or not to kind of consider that a case, that is like a symptomatic case for COVID-19.
I want to hear the starting story of ContagionNet. It's so unique to be working within an AI company rolling out a physical test. How did this start?
When the pandemic started, our CEO, a lot of folks at DataRobot were seeing the types of tools and modeling and data that was being used to drive decisions at the state and federal level. And the general response was from DataRobot folks was that they were just disappointed with the quality of the data that was being used and then how that was being interpreted to make decisions. And our CEO in particular was like, this is unacceptable. And he knew that DataRobot could do better. With that, he actually allocated 50% of our R&D resources to fighting COVID-19 as a data science problem specifically. Not really having many connections or not fully kind of knowing exactly how we were going to approach the problem. Hundreds of data scientists and engineers joined, just starting to chip away at it and make deeper connections with folks at CDC, HHS, NIH, FDA, all those acronyms. And with that, started to be able to show them the power of the data that we were collecting and being able to model on.
Do you have a test handy?
I do, yeah.
Are these things actually real, or are you just making up these pilots?
No,
do you have a real
these
test?
are real.
Oh, wow. Yeah, hold it close to the camera.
Wow. I don't know where the camera is. There.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's a dipstick style format, lateral flow assay. You can see the barcode that I talked about, and then this is the window. So this would be for a person who, what we would call high viral load. Many test lines appear, and there's also many obfuscation lines there.
What's the process, and how long does it take to get to the end?
It's a pretty fast process. I think I have most up here. So you have a swab. I'm not going to pick my nose, but you just swirl it around your nostril a couple times. You put a couple drops of buffer into a tube. You put the swab in, you mix it up for about 5 seconds. Then you take one of the antigen checks, throw it in with the swab and the buffer, and then you wait 15 minutes. And so that whole process takes about a minute. After 15 minutes, you remove the dipstick from the tube. Then you, it's awkward because I'm holding it up, but these are the imaging cards. The imaging cards have a couple features on them, a QR code, a color corrector, and some features that highlight where you put the test strip essentially. So you take a picture of this imaging card on the web application, or we have a mobile app as well, upload your results, and turns it around almost instantaneously. So it can tell you if you're detected or not detected.
Why do you think we need this at-home antigen test?
The fact that we already have a vaccine for COVID-19 is incredible, and kudos to the work, again, of all the scientists that have contributed to the vaccine's development. When it comes to distribution, though, when it comes to actually getting vaccines in arms, I think all of us are familiar with some of the hurdles that we've seen, either in the news in terms of people either not being able to get the vaccine when they want it, or large swaths of the population not wanting to get the vaccine because they think the development of it was rushed. And meanwhile, every time there's a delay, every time people aren't able to get access, that means more people are getting sick, and that means people die. When it comes to this being a solution that we need sooner rather than later, what we see is the ability of ContagionNet to complement vaccine rollout so we can actually get to the end of this faster.
I did want to hit on something very important about this test, because I feel like this test is not just the test, there's a technology component to it as well.
Right.
Let's talk about the technology side. So what is it in addition to the test?
Yeah, I'm very guilty of only talking about the antigen checks because they've been my baby. But really, I mean, the whole project has been my baby, but there's an amazing team of people who are working on the digital experience. So essentially, after you take your test, which is easy to do, you have your lateral flow assay, and then you take a picture of the lateral flow assay, and then that picture is uploaded to the ContagionNet application. And the ContagionNet application will do a couple things. First of all, it deciphers your results, and so the different test lines can light up. We also have what we call obfuscation lines, and they're laid down in different patterns. So that pattern could mean that 3 lines is negative, could mean that 4 lines is negative, could mean that 1 line is negative. So, and they're laid down in ways that but you're usually getting a slightly different results day over day. And so as a result, when you take a picture, there's a barcode on the dipstick. The barcode helps interpret exactly what's supposed to appear in that, what we call the testing window. So how many lines are supposed to appear, which obfuscation pattern is there. And then after that, it also aggregates and anonymizes all of that data so it can be reported to public health authorities. So we take the privacy of the individual uploading the result very seriously. So the only thing that we ask from an individual is their zip code, their age, and email address. We have no other information. And then actually, as the user puts their information into the system, we remove the user profile information. We just make them essentially like a code in our system. So we don't even know who the user is. And the idea of that is always to protect the user's privacy. And so once the user's data is uploaded, then we can anonymize and aggregate that data, report it out to the public health authorities at that zip code level. And so they actually have the ability to respond at that level of granular data. And that's another kind of lesson learned that we found from our other COVID work, is that the data usually is not granular enough for people to be able to effectively respond. So you just have data at a pretty large population level, like a city, right? And you just see that cases are increasing. There's probably some sort of trend in there. There's probably some neighborhood that it's increasing more than others. But often you don't know. You just kind of see cases rise and fall. You have no ability to be proactive. And so the overall goal with the digital system and the anonymous reporting is that you're able to get that granular data in order to respond, either help move different PPE into a different part of the city, put up a mobile PCR confirmatory clinic so you can get access to that confirmatory testing. There's lots of different ways you can kind of make this data actionable. And that in turn creates this feedback loop of data where people are continuing to take their antigen checks at home, and then the public health authority at whatever level, local, state, federal, can make decisions in real time about the spread that they're seeing.
For tech companies, how do I know you're not using my data for other purposes, to make money off of me or to better understand me as a lead, et cetera?
Yeah, that's very important for us. We've seen that there's actually some backlash against some of the apps, the testing apps, where you're kind of putting your data into somebody's hands and they can do whatever with it. So first of all, again, we separate the user information from the person themselves. So the only information that we know is their age and zip code. We will never sell your data. We have no interest in profiting off people's data. The only way that we use it is to help with reporting and identify and slow the spread of COVID-19. And then we also make your data super easy to delete. So you can make a request on the ContagionNet app to delete everything that we have on you, and we will do so immediately. It's something that our engineers take seriously. It's something that our lawyers take seriously. It's something that I take seriously.
What's the benefit of having this data coming in through this system as opposed to just having like a pregnancy test style antigen check?
So there's the individual level results, obviously. So the individual can take the right action at the right time, isolate, wear a mask, wash their hands, stay away from family and friends. So that component is important. The population level data, again, that having that ability to respond is key.
But I guess that's also true of a pregnancy test. So if my wife takes a pregnancy test, she's going to go to the doctor to confirm it.
Right. It all comes back to data visibility and ensuring that people are going to upload their results. So for an at-home, the user is going to be responsible for uploading their result. And so you take an extra 5 minutes out of your day to upload the result the first time. Maybe you do it the second time, maybe you do it the third time. But over time, you're going to get that one line and you're going to be like, okay, I get it. Like, I'm negative. And especially if you're negative, you're like, I don't pose a risk to anybody. And so you're not going to take an extra couple minutes to upload your result. And every time you don't upload your result, that's a gap. That's data that we can't respond to, even if you're negative. People who test positive, there's a stigma associated with it. And so what they want to do is hunker down. They don't want anybody to know. And so if you're testing negative or positive, that's all important data that we need in order to respond.
And I think there's an important part on the data where it goes both ways, because we tell the user a lot of stuff about what's going on in their own area, right? So maybe I'm not going to do 5 trips to the grocery store, or maybe I'm not going to go to the restaurant, depending on what the app is saying. So talk about some of the information the user gets.
Yeah. Even if you don't have access to a test kit per se, we give stats about the area in terms of an individual risk score of what your risk is of being exposed. We encourage people to report their status. And so since we have their zip code information, we can actually kind of understand what the level of immunity is, and we can report that out to the user if your neighborhood has uncharacteristically low or high immunity. We can also show trends in terms of what the cases are, which obviously a lot of people have that data, but we also can show within those curves what the impact of contagion that would be if everyone is following the antigen check protocol. We also try to make it social so people can log on and kind of share with their friends that they're participating. So it's not just about the antigen checks themselves. It's about understanding what your risk is holistically, what your risk as an individual is, what your risk is in different areas, and also kind of getting your friends engaged in the movement and trying to make it a little fun. I mean, I think there's one thing that we lacked in 2020 was fun. So even though this is a serious topic, we also want to make sure that people are like engaging in the information and not completely bored out of their minds.
How many people in the US have to do a test like this for it to actually make a difference?
On average, it's about 10% to 30% of a general population needs to be engaged in taking antigen checks frequently. And then that frequency, how we define that is actually an AI-driven algorithm that will tell you how frequently you should test based off the incidence and prevalence and characteristics of the user.
Is this test FDA approved?
It's not. Well, we actually don't call it a test. It's a tool. So the FDA is in charge of diagnostic tests. We are a non-diagnostic, and we use the term antigen check in order to help differentiate that we are not a test. We believe that the FDA has done incredible work at approving the PCR tests, other antigen tests in general, the vaccines. But there's a room, and there needs to be room for other tools that can be used to stop the spread of COVID-19. And so we really focus in on the fact that we have followed the science here. We actually perform at or better than antigen tests that are on the market. But our goal is not to be a diagnostic test. Our goal is to be a tool in people's hands.
What would you tell them to do if they do test positive on one of these antigen tests?
We ask them to do 2 things. So first of all antigen tests have a risk of having false positives. If someone tests positive, we immediately, or what we call has viral load detected, we immediately ask them to take a second antigen check. So that way we can confirm the result. If they test positive twice in a row, then we immediately recommend that they go get a confirmatory diagnostic FDA-approved test, usually a PCR.
But I feel like with the science, it allows me to have a little bit more informed flexibility, right? So if I want to go to a family gathering, and if they're doing these tests, if we're all doing the tests, I feel like right now it's just kind of a gamble, where with more information, you can make some of these more informed decisions, right?
I think informed flexibility is probably like a really good way to put it. Any test, even PCR tests, the approved antigen tests, our antigen checks, none of them can 100% guarantee that you don't have COVID. And so it's not supposed to be, hey, I tested negative on an antigen check, or I had no viral load detected on my antigen check, so now I'm going to go run out and hug my grandmother. You would still want to wear a mask and socially distance.
Yeah.
I think in detecting the most contagious people is actually what's important here. Confirming people are worse sick and are no longer contagious, like that's an important piece of data, but that doesn't help stop the spread. That doesn't help people. That doesn't get sick people off the streets or infecting their friends and family. It's not useful. I don't care about non-infectious people, non-contagious people walking the streets. What I care about is what your risk is to me, and you only play a risk to me if you're contagious. So that's really what I like to focus in on. Those are the people that I worry most about.
This is such an obvious solution. Listening to you, I'm oversold on it. So if I want to get these kits for my household, for my in-laws, for my friends, my parents, etc., where do I go to get these delivered this weekend?
Unfortunately, we can't get them to you this weekend, but we are starting to spread the word. We want everyone to know about ContagionNet. We want to make sure that we are in a position to start to scale up our manufacturing and figure out how to get antigen checks into every hand, every person who wants them in the United States. And one way that we want to go about doing that is starting bigger partnerships and bigger engagements with folks who are interested, with organizations that are interested in using antigen checks as a surveillance screening tool. So one way you can go get more information is go to our website, which is contagion.net. So go check that out, you can get more information there. And then if anyone signs up, we're going to keep everyone who signs up updated on our mailing list so they can get more information as soon as we're able to go further and wider.
This podcast is called The More Intelligent Tomorrow, and we do like to talk to our guests about the future. So in the context of this test, what is the future of pandemics and illness if this reaches the level of success that you imagine?
One of the main goals of this project is to think beyond what's going to happen with COVID-19. So obviously we're very focused on COVID-19. The antigen checks were developed for COVID-19 specifically, but this is not going to be our last pandemic. We need faster solutions. We need the ability to deploy those new solutions, new tools as quickly as possible in the future. And so what we think ContagionNet could be a solution to bigger biodefense problems in the future, responding to pandemics and outbreaks in real time, being able to be proactive instead of reactive. I know everyone says that these days, but your ability to respond is what's going to stop the spread of this virus and viruses in the future or other types of disease in the future. So we're really focused on how this can be we can implement this in a way that allows for us to adapt to whatever comes next.
Is there a trend of just having actionable insights sooner? So if I have cancer, if I have something that's coming, we'll just have those insights sooner so we can have proactive actions to prevent things from escalating. Is that something we can look forward to, just getting ahead of a lot of these illnesses?
Yeah, the ability to detect kind of micro changes in the body and be able to respond to what those micro changes mean and be able to design drugs that target those micro changes, or just being able to use that as an early warning signal so people go to the hospital when they need to or go to the doctor as an early warning signal. That is definitely one piece of it. A lot of people don't know just how much is still unknown in science. We just keep getting into, keep learning more and more and more. The amount of scientific literature that is published year over year, from new diagnostics, new therapeutics, to just understanding how chemicals work with the body or how cells even work, basic functions. We are learning so much, and AI will actually give us the ability to apply that learning and actually make it actionable and find new ways, new things faster.
This is fantastic. You are fantastic as always. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much.